Background: my grandparents have always been a big part of my life, as have the rest of my family. They had 5 children, including my father, and 13 grandchildren, 6 great-grandchildren. My grandparents are quite rich. They had 3 businesses until last year when my grandfather died. I am the child of my grandchildren and have always been very close to them. My grandma used to babysit me until I could go to kindergarten. I wrap Christmas presents for her every year. I decorate their house, and I worked at their bar on Fridays in college, no pay, as they are too old to do these things themselves. All this was offered to my cousins, but they never helped. My grandparents ran a show horse farm for over 40 years. It was what my father took with him and I quickly began to love. I used to go every weekend with my grandma up until high school when I started studying. Even though I don't ride horses anymore, my dad and I go to clean the stalls and look after the horses every week when my grandparents are away on trips. Usually once every 2 months. My grandparents were a huge part of my life. Problem: my grandmother died 4 weeks ago. It was devastating. My grandmother left my aunts, uncles, and dad about $85,000 each. Money for which she and my grandfather worked very, very hard. It was expected. What was not expected was that they would leave me just over $45,000 along with some other valuables. I was honestly shocked. All my cousins received about $2,000 each and a few trinkets. Obviously you can see where it was going. My aunts and uncles were at the reading when I was told, so they told their children. Everyone except the parents is furious. My cousins, who are already adults, demand that I divide them equally. I don't feel like I should. I was very close to my grandparents and did a lot for them, but it's hard. My family is very tight-knit and we have holidays / monthly parties / dinners / etc. together, every year. I never expected money to tear us apart. This money can change a lot for me. I could pay off my $10,000 student loan and put the rest into my upcoming wedding / future kids / savings account. A small part of me wants to share it equally, just to have everyone together. But there was a reason they left this to me. They didn't do it to hurt anyone. I was the only one who visited them and helped them. None of them took the time to see them, except for family gatherings. But no one understands this except my parents. It seems to me that I alone destroy the family. My aunts and uncles won't talk to my father until I split the money, and my cousins won't talk to me. I only have a student loan and a car payment, so I don't have much debt, but it could give me a comfortable future. They all keep throwing in my face that they have families, house payments, college to pay for, etc. They keep saying I've been planning this for a long time, but I really didn't. I loved my grandparents. My fiancé tells me to forget about them and do what's best for me, but I'm a big family man. I don't want to split the money, that could really help me, but I feel like they can play with me, forcing me to choose between them and this. My parents also want me to keep the money for myself, as they think my family members are being ridiculous in demanding it. Is it right for me to keep that much? I feel like I deserve it. Is it right for me to put this money on my family? Or are the people I've been so close to all my life taking advantage of me? $45,000 versus $2,000 is a huge difference. PS, there is more in the will than I explained. Houses, classic cars, horses, farm, land, CDs, etc. The cashback / checking accounts I was given is the only thing that seems to be a problem for everyone. I have inherited more money than my cousins. They demand that I divide it equally between them or never speak to them again. I am a 16-year-old female. I used to have a good relationship with my mother. That has since crashed and burned since she dated and married my stepdad, Gary, 6 years ago. Gary treats his son Ian, 19 male, like he's the center of the universe and expects my mother to as well, so she does. Anything Ian wants, Ian gets, and that usually comes at the expense of me. Ian wanted my room when they moved it. I was forced to go to another room to make the transition easier for everyone. Ian wanted a car for his 16th birthday. I didn't get braces for another year. Ian wanted to go on an expensive trip for spring break. I had to give up volleyball to make it happen. Ian wanted to have his side of the family over. I was expected to find somewhere else to be, since I wasn't family. My mother just went along with all of this and acted like it shouldn't affect me at all. My dad was overseas for a long time, and we used to FaceTime, and he was so upset by what he was hearing. He's home now and he's offering to have me come live with him. I'm not seeing a reason not to go, and so I told my mom I wanted to go live with my dad. She predictably freaked out and asked why I'd want to do that and said that we had such a good relationship. She didn't understand how this came so out of the blue. I told her that we haven't had a good relationship since she blindly decided to follow Gary's lead and give Ian anything he wanted, and it always came at my expense. My mom tried to argue, so I said I also wanted to leave because she let them kick me out of my own house because I wasn't family. So I was going to go live with someone who was. My mom started crying and said she wouldn't let me go. So I told her that my dad was willing to go to court over it and I was old enough to be able to say where I wanted to be. She's been a crying mess since I told her, and Gary is being a jackass about how awful I'm being. He was. ING at me about how terribly I'm treating them and how I'm not thinking about them at all. I asked why should I. He never thought of me when he was taking things from me to give to his kid. I said let's face facts here, you don't care about me, what you care about is losing the child support you spend on your son. He sort of went slack-jawed and I walked off. My dad said my mom called and threatened to take him to court, so he said he'd see her there. Now she's panicking because she realized he is planning on taking her to court over this. Mom and Gary of course think I'm the asshole for making things hard for everyone. But my dad and grandparents say to leave and never look back. My dad died and I'm scared my family won't get along. So yesterday after my dad comes home he eats what my mom made for him. Eggs and Spam. To be clear, he has a pre-existing medical history of high blood pressure and gout. First found out when he was admitted to the hospital in 2015 when he fell ill, and we basically had to force him to go to the hospital BC he didn't want to go. He was put on medication since, with changes to them maybe a year or so ago. So back to when after he ate. My half-sister heard a thud around 740-ish and told me to check BC. She thought maybe my parents are arguing. I go down and see my dad on the kitchen floor, my mom behind him a few feet away, and I hear him snoring. I ask my mom a question, get worried, run back upstairs and knock on my sister's door. She calls my other sister and also tells me to stop wasting time, call 911. I was scared and frantic. I wish I called 911 or saw him when he came in so I could maybe have called sooner. They get frantic too and we all start yelling at each other and I try to maintain order also as I'm talking to 911 person. At some point in all of this my brother-in-law yells for help and I help him turn my dad onto his side. BC he said he could choke on his saliva. My dad stops snoring and we start panicking. The EMS tells us how to perform CPR but my sisters keep yelling and so I try to get them working together. They finally start working on it. One is doing compression and the other giving him air and sometimes rotating. Fire department and ambulance gets here and they start doing the same thing but also have defibrillators, and honestly, I'm just in shock still. It was maybe 8:03 p.m. when they came or so, I don't remember, it's all a blur. I checked my phone for timestamp, but I called twice so I forgot when original call was placed. They called it at 8:50 p.m. and I just began to lose it. My aunt comes and my sister is trying to call my dad's work to let his bosses know. We talk about how we want my dad's arrangements and agree on cremation. BC we don't have the money for anything else, but also my sister wants the remains. My mom is bipolar schizophrenic and my sisters and bro-in-law don't get along. Her because of a whole history that would keep you here forever if I tried to type it. My dad was a bad person but he still chose us and tried his best to provide regardless of his fallacies. He had my mom's back too, saying he wouldn't kick her out or place her in a mental home. My sisters kinda want that, I think, but I'm scared to talk about it. My mom is okay sometimes but also acts up BC of her mental illness sometimes, and my dad and I were her constants regardless of what happened. My mom is old and still wants to benefit from some social security services that my dad had, but my sisters and I think we should get a majority control of his account. There's a lot of renovations to be done. BC he ignored upkeep of the house for a number of years, example, the roof. My mom is not very sad about the ordeal. BC she had a long history of mental abuse from my dad and I understand, but we for some reason stayed together. It how to move forward except for one moment at a time, and I'm still waiting for funeral home to come pick up his body. It's 8:13 a.m. now, been waiting since night before. And I have been crying, but also I can't sleep, and I'm sorry if this doesn't meet guidelines. I just need to vent even though I told a few friends. I'm still in disbelief. How this will moving forward. I believe it can though. But it's hard to stay positive. I am a 24 years old female. I am the product of my mom having an affair. Fortunately, my dad decided to forgive my mom and keep me, and I had a pretty good upbringing. But I don't really look a lot like the rest of my family. I'm the only redhead, among other things, and I did ask questions of why am I the only one with? When I was 17, my mom took me out for ice cream and introduced me to my bio father. She said that she felt I was old enough to know the truth, and explained about her affair, while also making me promise I wouldn't tell my older sister, she's 27 in the present, and hammering home along with my bio father that he'd never be part of my life and didn't want me. It was a lot, I won't lie, but I learned to suck it up and move on with my life. Fast forward to the present. My big sis has always gravitated towards older men. We like to joke that it's the result of too many George Clooney movies growing up. And 2 months ago shared a picture of herself and her new boyfriend, who, to my shock, turned out to be my bio father. I debated what to do for a couple of days, then ultimately decided she needed the truth and told her. My sister did not take it well and dumped him, but she wasn't angry with me. Honestly, by now she's kinda amused, says that she's my mom and has extra power to boss me around now. My mom, on the other hand, is furious. She says I divulged something that wasn't my secret to share, and that I had no business telling anyone. That since bio father isn't related to my sister, it didn't matter if he dated my sister, and it wasn't like they were talking marriage anyway. It's been 2 months and she's still angry, still snide. Calls me a traitor and finds excuses to make loud comments about how I can't be trusted with anything private or important, so beware. At the time I thought I was doing the right thing, but I've never seen my mom this angry before. And she's sustained that anger for 2 solid months, so I'm starting to worry.